There's nothing wrong with your radio. Do not make an effort to modify the volume. We are commanding the broadcast now. If we desire to make it louder, we will adjust the decibels. When forecasting the difference between reality and the extraordinary, perhaps it may not be as simple as it seems, because the world you think you know may not actually exist. Now, let's begin your journey into the Creepcast Terror Files.
On September 12, 1952, a mother and 5 school children ventured into the woods of West Virginia, armed with only a flashlight, to find a fiery object they had seen falling from the sky. As they crested the hill, they spotted a red glow of a mysterious object, but before they could get to it, they were met by a creature that would haunt their nightmares for years to come. The Flatwood Phantom. What's up, guys? It's Jason, and this is Justin. This is not your average Creepcast that you're listening to right now. No, we're doing a little spinoff here because let me back up real quick. Creepcast is not changing. We still do our normal Creepcast, but this will be a little extra bonus you'll get maybe once or twice a month.
Extraterrestrial
bonus. How about that? So, yes, I had to jump in and say we're diehard. I don't know how you say. I want to say like X-Files style people, right? But
sure.
We like the cryptids. We like the
monsters,
urban legends.
Man.
We love monsters, right?
It goes back to like the origin story of all this, man. We grew up loving monsters.
Absolutely,
right?
and I love hearing like local lore and all that stuff. And Justin and I will sit behind the counter here at Terror Trader and talk about shit like this for weeks and weeks on end, and finally we're like, why don't we just try to do a show? Because I know there's tons of shows out there about this stuff, but let's just give it our little Terror Trader Creepcast vibe,
right.
And all this stuff. So
I love hearing people come in and talk about things they might have saw in the woods when they were 7 years old.
Fuck, I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they got these really cool campy stories for you. And do you believe it? Do you not believe it? Like,
that's it, right there.
That's the coolest part.
And and I think this is where we're going to go with this. So you guys, this thing will evolve, right? The Terror Files
yes.
will evolve a little bit here and there. And but I think at the end of this, when we do a case study, I'm going to call this a case study.
This
sounds fucking great, right?
Enter the portal.
Yes. When we do a case study, at the end of this, I want to know. I just want one thing from you, right? Is it real? Is it bullshit? Or is it whatever? You know what I'm saying? I want a definitive answer from you, and I'll give you one of myself and how I feel. And I really want the listeners out there, right? You guys, the creeps out there, to tell us what you think about this.
I dig it, man. I want to know theories. I want to know your theories. I want to know their theories. I want to prove my points.
I'm a fucking nerd when it comes to this. Yes. I love this shit, man. You know, and I think this correlates really well. It goes hand in hand with horror. Because, I mean, we're talking monsters. We're talking things that go creepy shit in the woods and all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's stuff like UFOs even as well, right? I mean, there's tons of shit like this, man.
I think it's your boy from West Virginia, the Mothman, that inspired a lot of our love for this kind of thing,
100%.
Right?
And the thing is, I'd love to talk about the Mothman right off the bat. We both felt that would be way too easy, right? There's so much shit out there. And not saying that we'll get to the Mothman, because that's my neck of the woods. Right? Yeah. But in West Virginia, there's another very not well-known urban legend, myth. I mean, who knows what this thing is, right? Because some people will say alien, some people say it could be a cryptid. No one knows. Right. But the Flatwood Monster, the Flatwood Phantom, I guess you want to. Well, I guess they have plenty of names that we're going to get to, right?
Right.
You know, they've named this thing a few times.
I will say, I do think the Phantom sounds the coolest of the bunch.
The Phantom is what I'm going to call it. We're just going to go because a lot of people. I think its big name is the Flatwood Monster, right?
Right.
But you guys hear Braxton County Monster or just Braxy. It's like it's like like Toxic Avenger, but it's Toxie.
Braxy's cool.
They've already worked that out, man. But so we're gonna get into that. Is our topic for the day, you guys. We're gonna and then well, you know what? At the end of this show, because we're idiots. I'll be the first people to admit to that. We're dumbasses, but we may bring in let's bring in an expert to set us straight, right?
Right.
And we'll keep that a secret till we get to about halfway through the show and bring it in. I think it's something we should try to keep doing every show. By the way.
I think this is going to be a common trend.
Yeah,
because you'll get our typical bullshit, but I think it's important to get somebody who specializes in these kind of things.
I agree, right? Because look, from a guy who grew up in West Virginia, right? Well, I grew up, 18 years of my. Oh God, I'm almost 50. Jesus Christ. I was in West Virginia, right? So, but for my childhood, the Flatwoods Phantom, the Flatwoods Monster, was not in my. I don't even remember hearing much about it. It may have crossed my path or two, but it always got stomped by one thing: the Mothman. Right.
And it's so insane because it predates it by I don't remember.
I think 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
right.
But I guess you know what, central West Virginia to where you were at on the west side. Right?
Yeah, and that's how I grew up a little bit on the west side. So where is Flatwoods? I guess let's talk about this in a geography sense, right? If West Virginia was like a teapot, right? You know, you kind of look at West Virginia the way it's shaped. It's got like a spout off to the east, right?
Yeah.
It's got like a little, I don't know what, like a dick or something hanging from the top, right? And then it's just like the base of the teapot that they're there, right? That was the worst. Sorry, West Virginia. That was the worst explanation.
Man, they get beat up on these shows.
But it was literally Flatwoods is or Braxton County, right? Is literally dead center almost in West Virginia, right? And it's I want to say the population of Flatwoods is like 250 people, right? It's in a holla. You know what a holla is? It's like kind of like in the little valley between mountains, and all that stuff, right? That's what we have out there. We got hollas.
And it looks like there was, from a documentary that we were watching based on this, it looked like it's just surrounded by a 60-mile-long highway, and that's kind of all that.
There's nothing else there.
Just nothing.
I mean, it's like
one grocery store, one church.
It's
one
a
gym.
very one-stoplight town, man. I think it has, and don't quote me on this, those who are from this area, but it had like a train track, basically a railway going like to Pittsburgh, going through it, and that's where, and it's near a river. When you put a railway and a river next to each other, there's a fucking town going to pop up, right? One way or another.
If you miss church on Sunday, they'll talk about it, and everybody in the town's going to 100%.
Yeah, if you fucking do anything wrong, guess what? They fucking know about it in Flatwoods, man. But I never really traveled much to Flatwoods. To give you guys an idea, Point Pleasant, which I grew up just outside of, right, where the Mothman is from. It's about 2 hours, a little under 2 hours to the west of Flatwoods. Okay, so but still pretty damn close, and it's probably, if it was a straight line shot, you'd probably get there in an hour, but you know how it is. It's West Virginia. Sure. Lots of mountains and hills and hollows and all types of shit, right?
Yes.
But so yeah, and I don't remember being straight in Flatwoods before, but there's towns near it, Spencer and these other towns that I remember going as a kid going to for like a wrestling tournament or something like that. But that is, they all look the same, right?
Sure.
So, but I never really dove down into this more until my last trip to West Virginia. I went back down to the Mothman Museum. I always go visit it to go, touch,
his butt,
the Mothman's butt, right? And then I just started seeing some more lore, and I kept seeing the Flatwood Phantom, or the Flatwood Monster, and I'm like, okay, let's dive into this. And finally, Jay and I said, let's fucking do this. So that's what you guys are getting into here today. Now, look, a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about is I'm actually pulling from websites. Instead of rewriting this stuff and all this stuff, we have some pretty good sources, and I'll let you guys know the sources. Like today, we're going off of mythology.net and all that stuff. But there's tons. You type in Flatwood Monster, Flatwood Phantom, thousands of different sites will pop up and all that, but they all kind of say the same,
Right.
There are some that embellish a little bit more than others, but this one, I think, because we kind of know the real story, all right, which we'll talk about later on in this episode, but we kind of know this one's pretty close to what I've seen here from the words, or I guess from the actual people who actually saw the Flatwood Phantom, and so we'll get into that. So, all right, what do you think?
I say we roll. Let's do this. I think.
Okay. I read like a third grader that literally skipped school, and
you read like a West Virginian.
Yeah, so bear with me because I do have a lot of reading to do. And look, if it's so unbearable, we're going to break, or obviously we're going to talk about certain points, but I'll make Jay read the next ones and all that stuff in the next episode, man. But let's talk about the sighting, right? Let's talk about what the hell we're talking about, this Flatwoods Phantom. And this is a cool little story here, which we'll be able to actually, I guess, expand on.
We'll expand on this one
in a second. So let's get through this. All right. Here we go. Gather around the radio. So, all right. Around 7 p.m., Edward May, Fred May, and Tommy Heiner were outside enjoying the last few minutes of daylight when the play was interrupted by a strange sight. A glowing object streaking through the sky. All right. The boys watched the object until it came to a rest on a hill that belonged to a local farmer, old G. Bailey Fisher. And we always have three names back there. Yes. You always got Allie Mae something.
The May sounded like the prototypical.
Yeah, name. Right. So, but so they see this thing, right? So that's what they saw. They saw this little. It was a glowing dot or something, right? A ball of fire that actually rested on a hill. Now, as a kid, you're out there playing, right? In the holler. throwing the football, chasing your sister around, you know.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
No. And there was a thick mist supposedly said to be looming around.
And that happens in these. Once again, you get these. You're in a valley a little bit, right? Stuff comes down. So, all right. As soon as the light faded, the boys sprinted to Mrs. May's home. Right, that's the mom. Right. They tumbled into the house, spilling their story as fast as they could, and begging for permission to go out and search for the object. Now, Mrs. May decided to accompany the boys, right? Because out in the hollers, you got Jed out there sometimes. He gets a little handsy. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Along with 2 other local children and a National Guardsman named Eugene Lemon. Now, Eugene Lemon was a 17-year-old National Guardsman, so don't think he was like Rambo. Okay, I want to put that out there. They label the National Guardsman out there kind of loosely.
Don't do Eugene like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eugene, but he was a young National Guardsman. So, in other words, he had some type of military training, right?
Right.
All right, and he also took his dog. So they found an old flashlight and headed for the farm. When they reached the Fisher farm, which was up on, I want to say that street was called, I think it was like Baker Street. So that becomes a famous name here eventually. I think famous. Anyway, I'll get back to that in a second.
Sure.
Darkness has settled over the landscape, and the fog was beginning to creep in from the hills, like you were saying, right?
Right.
Eugene's dog ran ahead.
Old Yeller.
Yeah, Old Yeller. That's right. Yeah, I guarantee this is like a blue tick hound or some shit, right?
He's got to be a hound dog,
right? Smells horrible, man. I had a dog like this. This is amazing. But after the dog ran up here, a few minutes later, he bolted back to the group with his tail between his legs. All right. Despite this ominous sign, the group pressed forward. Now, what would you do at that point? All right, your dog comes back, right? Old Yeller comes back with his tail between his legs, and it's nighttime. The mist is coming through everywhere, and you're up in the fucking woods.
I'm out.
I'm out. Okay, all right.
Come on, man.
This is a double check here.
Yeah,
right?
Yeller, you're getting in the truck. We're out of here. Of course, you know exactly what that truck looks like, too, by the way.
400%.
Barely works, but...
Yeah, lots of rust.
Lots of rust.
It has, like, spray paint on the side, like farm use.
Blue and red stripes.
Even though that goes right down the street all the time.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, so here we go. After traveling about a quarter mile and reaching the top of the hill, they spotted a red pulsating object in the distance. And about the same time, they began to notice a thick mist that hurt their eyes and had a metallic sulfuric smell. Okay, so this comes into play as well. So they're getting hit with some type of chemical at this time, right? And this is where I go, does this, when I start looking, and we'll get in a second, guys, how does this play a factor into what they saw? Right? And all that stuff. So, moving on. All right. Eugene Lemon, he was the National Guardsman, right? He took the lead, guiding the little group ahead with their flashlight. Now, this little group reminds me of like a Stand By Me.
Stand By Me is exactly what I was thinking.
Know what I'm saying?
Amazing, yes.
This is why I like this story, because it's so fucking Stand By Me, right?
Yes.
And all that stuff. No, it was Depot Street. Sorry, I said Baker Street.
Yeah,
I think
Depot
Baker
Street.
I think Baker Street's a song.
It's probably catty corner. Depot Street.
But Depot Street is where that was up there now, so that's kind of the famous street now, or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, it is very
Stand By Me?
Yeah.
100%.
If you look, I saw a picture of these guys. I saw the whole group, right? And it is fucking right out of a Stephen King novel or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's or like not George Lucas, who did E.T. Whatever.
Oh yeah, Spielberg.
Yeah, like a Spielberg movie, man.
Sure.
So okay. All right, so like I said, Eugene Lemon took the lead, guiding the group ahead with his flashlight. They haven't gone far when they spotted a pair of shiny animal eyes under the oak tree. All right. He swerved the flashlight to reveal the Flatwoods monsters, which screamed and then rushed at him and then immediately disappeared.
Man, can you imagine that scream? Like, what would that thing sound like?
I heard it was like a really like someone watching a documentary on this. It was like a loud, like imagine cooking bacon, but like it was like a loud sizzling like scream type of thing, right? But this thing fucking coming at you. Oh, and we'll get into the description of this thing in a minute, guys.
Right, and it reeks, and it's got that glow, and it's screaming at you.
Your already eyes are burning.
You're in the middle of West Virginia? Get me out.
Right?
God.
All right, after the monster disappeared, the terrified group rushed back to Mrs. May's home. All of them were so frightened that they felt sick, and some of the younger children began to complain of nausea and burning feeling in their throats, all right? Possibly side effect of that mist they inhaled. Gene Lemon, right, experienced vomiting and convulsions for the rest of the night.
That's trippy, man.
Yeah, so that's right there. That's okay. We got issues, right?
Right.
We just got chemical warfare going on.
Right. It's not our oddities room. This is the middle of West Virginia.
Yeah,
man. Come
right?
on. That's gnarly stuff. Convulsions?
Yeah. Okay. That's guarantee these kids got cancer. Sorry, I just saying, man. Well, that's not natural, right?
Right.
Mrs. May called the Sheriff Robert Carr, and Mr. Lee Stewart, who was the owner of the local newspaper out there, right?
Okay.
The sheriff couldn't respond because he was investigating a report of a crashed airplane nearby. No, think about that, right? Once again, we're seeing this big red ball light that just lowers itself down.
Sure.
This is 1950 fucking 2, okay? I don't even know if helicopters were around at this point. I had to look. I think they may have been just started getting introduced in the Korean War, which was mid-50s, right?
Right.
So we may have had helicopters, and this could have been something, but I don't know, man, because what else would just hover and lower down to the ground? You know?
Saucers.
Okay, exactly. All right, so Mr. Stewart, the guy who owned the magazine or the newspaper, began interviewing witnesses. He collected 20 reports from other people who have seen an object flying through the sky. That's a quote, right? As well as some more sensational claims, such as houses being shaken by a heavy impact or radio signals being disturbed. Eventually, the sheriff and his deputy, Mr. Stewart, went to investigate the scene of the landing. The sheriff and his deputy, quote, saw, heard, and smelled nothing, right? But Mr. Stewart reported a sickening, burnt metallic odor is still prevailing. Okay, so we have two different I guess witnesses or eyewitness accounts, right?
Right, and it's one thing, an eyewitness, but like a smell witness. Like,
right. The next morning, Mr. Stewart returned for a second look and discovered 2 long skid marks in the grass, as well as thick black oily substance. And now I remember watching the documentary on this, and they were saying that there was no other tracks of where a tractor or anything went up there, right?
Right.
It was
no
literally
farm equipment.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah. So it was literally boom. 2 skid marks right in the middle of a fucking wide open field. Not a wide open field, I guess a hilltop field, right? A flatwood, right? I guess, or whatever. And then boom, it's and then it's just gone,
Right.
So that's pretty wild, man. That's the actual sighting. That's one of the sightings, by the way.
Right.
But that's kind of the more famous one, right?
Sure.
And everything. So now let's talk about that sulfuric smell, okay? There are sulfur mines in West Virginia, right? And which I'm not up to speed on this too much, right? Because I didn't hang out and at sulfur mines and fucking I think I would die if I did or whatever. But if because people are like, oh, maybe it was like a sulfur mine or something like that. It had that sulfuric smell, which you guys know sulfur. It's like rotten eggs.
It's when you smell it.
It is a ungodly, putrid, disgusting type of smell.
And in that documentary, May's mother actually notes that and says it would be so pungent you would smell it hours after the encounter.
Correct. Yeah. And so if this was just a mine that was up there, the kids would know about it. This is not this big. Oh, it's up by the old sulfur mine, right?
Exactly.
This is an area that didn't have any of that. So where did this smell come from? Where did this mist come from? Let alone where did this thing that screamed at me and came at me come from? You know what I'm saying? There's so many.
And what is the sheriff doing? Like, what is...
Well, I don't know. And that's a funny thing. Yeah. I mean, as a sheriff in a small town like this, where you got to go down and, Jed's got too much moonshine in him, right? And that's pretty much the big calls they're getting, or someone's cat's in a tree, right?
I just went to see The Mean One out in theaters, and that's exactly what the sheriff does. There's a town of 200 people, and all he does is take the local alcoholic home after 2 a.m.
That's it.
Bring him home.
And that's the beauty of a small town, right?
Exactly.
The sheriff could be, it goes back to the old Andy Griffith days, right? You don't have to be, or Dukes of Hazzard, Roscoe Pico Trey.
Right.
You don't have to be,
you probably have one on-duty officer.
Yeah, you're not Dick fucking Tracy in a town of 250 people, right?
Right.
You'll figure it out.
So a Flatwoods Phantom is probably a little bit above his pay grade.
Right.
So
this blows his mind. One, I'm investigating. Sorry, I can't go see your monster because I'm investigating an airplane crash, which is that's big fucking news in West Virginia. When an airplane crashes in West Virginia, something big is happening. Right.
That's front page.
But he didn't find an airplane. That's the funny part. He's like, where did this thing crash, right? And all that stuff. So we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about the physical description, right? Real quick, right? For the 6 people who saw the monster that night, its appearance was unforgettable, all right? It was between 7 and 15 feet tall, which is...
It's a pretty big disparity.
I think it all depends on how old you were. You know what I'm saying? If I'm 3 years old, or 6 years, I think that ranges of the kids, like 10 to 17 or whatever. But if I'm a 10-year-old, 6 foot probably looks like 10 foot.
Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Right,
yeah.
And then if it was a 10 to 15 foot, they probably thought it was like 20 feet tall or whatever. So you got to think. And also, these kids have sulfur in their eyes, right? So who knows, man? It had a dark body shrouded in a cloak of heavy folded black or green fabric, right? Its legs were invisible, but its arms ended in a small, like claw hands and extended from its body. It had a flat face and the head was shaped like a spade. Okay, and then you'll see, we'll put graphics on this as well and all this stuff, guys, on our thing. And the skin is described as a pale, fiery orange or red, even green, some people have said, right?
Yeah.
A dark hood hung around its face, and a pair of glowing animal eyes pierced through the darkness. Okay, when the monster saw the intruders, it let out a blood-curdling screech and bounded or glided toward them. Fortunately, it must have changed its path when Lemon dropped the flashlight because none of the witnesses were hurt. Now we said we've heard people say that it was an owl.
Yeah, some local West Virginia
right,
hillbillies.
Right, and look, and I grew up with those owls. Okay, owls are like 2 feet tall. Okay,
so, yeah, they're not pushing the 17-foot boundary.
Yeah, and I've even tried to think about this. Right, okay, maybe an owl sitting in like in an oak tree. Okay, and all that. Where I'm trying to think the hands, this and that. Yeah. You know, like branches.
Sure, but do they smell sulfur?
They do not.
You know what I mean?
They do not. And you're right. The only way you're going to see the owl's eyes glow is if you shine a light in it. But you do that, you're going to see an owl face.
Right.
And an owl body. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like,
and an invisible lower half, too.
Correct. Yeah, that's the big one, okay? Because if it was in a tree and the tree trunk just went down to the ground, you're going to see that.
You're going to see that. You're going to see his
And the
legs.
Trees don't fucking move towards you. You know?
But the description of said phantom is pretty goddamn intimidating.
Totally.
I mean...
Yeah. This thing looks...
He glows.
Right.
He's got a solid base.
Yes.
A spaded head. I mean, I just think of a python or something right away. I mean...
Yeah.
And a smell that'll keep you awake throughout the night.
Dude, this thing...
And it screams.
And it hisses and all types of crazy shit at you, right?
No, thank you.
Let me throw 2 other encounters real quick,
okay?
Right? Because before we get into an explanation and talk about a little government explanation, okay?
The government's always involved.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So these are 2 other encounters that came up. Now, one of these actually happened before the kids went up there and saw the mountain.
Okay.
So technically, this is one of the first eyewitness accounts, okay, of this thing. So, and this is pretty interesting. So, another sighting of the creature, and once again, I'm still getting this, guys, from mythology.net. So, another sighting of the creature, similar to the description of the Flatwoods monster, was reported by Mrs. Audrey Harper not long before the infamous sighting at the Fisher farm. So, I never got an exact date on this. I don't know if it was 2 days or 2 weeks, right? Sure. In a documentary I watched, she says she learned about their other sighting 2 weeks later, but I don't know, news down the hollow don't travel too fast, you know what I'm saying? So, Harper claims to have seen the monster by walking through the woods near the town of Heaters, which I guess is like 5 miles north of Flatwoods. Okay. I love the names in West Virginia.
Heaters,
man.
baby.
Heaters, baby.
I like that, man.
Some smoke, some Marlboros. Give me a heater, baby. Harper and her friend were walking to a nearby store. The road leading out of the property was kind of rutted and all that stuff. So taking a shortcut through the woods instead of walking on the road increased their trip, or it basically decreased the time they would be gone. Right. It was getting late and all that good type of stuff. So about a half mile into the trip to go to the store, and that's once again old school, guys. You had to walk uphill in the snow to the store.
Yes.
Some people actually had to fucking do that, right? So
in the town of Heaters.
In the town of Heaters, right? About a half mile into the trip, they noticed a ball of fire on one of the hills they're passing. That sounds very familiar, right? Yes. So Harper dismissed it, assuming it was one of their neighbors that was fox chasing, which I think back in the day, they get little camps up on the top of the hills. They go chase foxes. So they probably set a fire or whatever. So you got a little bonfire going up there.
It sounds like a Friday night for a West Virginian, right?
Right. Yeah, that's
make a fire.
That's a good
stuff.
time.
Right.
Yeah, that's some shit right there. All right, let's go get us some foxes. I guess I don't know. When she glanced back, she saw something that was unbelievable. The fire had vanished, right, and in its place stood a tall, dark silhouette of a man-shaped figure. Terrified, Harper and her friend ran, escaping among the rocks and boulders, basically to the still. They went all the way home. Their grandmother came out, led them into this fence, and saw the exact same thing. This thing chased them to the fence line.
Yeah.
Okay. The description was pretty much what I just told you guys. All right. The same thing. Spade head, about 10 to 15 feet, and just coming at them like crazy, right?
Right.
Okay, that's enough to just shit my fucking pants, right? And never leave.
Yeah, skid marks aren't just in the fields. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. No shit. There's another one. All right, check this out. All right, on the day after the September 12th event, all right, in Flatwoods, another strange sighting occurred near Strange Creek, and this is about 20 miles south of Flatwoods, okay? Reportedly, George and Edith Snitskowski, and that's a real name, but Snitskowski, all right, and their 18-month-old son were driving through a rural area between Clay and Braxton County on Route 4 when their car just suddenly stopped. I'm just going to say fucking George. I can't pronounce that. Yeah. Mr. Ski. How about that?
Oh, I like Mr. Ski.
He attempted to restart the car with no avail. It was nighttime and the road was deserted. While Snitskowski was trying to decide what to do, a foul, sulfurous smell filled the air, all right, and their baby began to cry. A strange bright light filled the darkness, and the couple witnessed a 10-foot-tall creature hovering in front of the car. Fuck this. Right. The description was similar to the original sighting, except the monster was not wearing what presumably be a spade-shaped hood. Instead, his head was reportedly reptilian and bony. The creature dragged its lizard-like hands across the hood of the car, then drifting away in the woods. As soon as the monster was out of sight, the car restarted, no problem, and they sped away.
Right. So
fuck this.
First takeaway. Yes. First takeaway is this one. There's no cloak, right? So it's just this reptilian-like head.
Correct.
We do get a median though from the 7 to 15 feet. We get 10.
Yes.
So I mean, it lines up pretty much from what became what it was 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So I mean, pretty much accurate.
Right.
The only thing that is interesting is that this one labels it a reptilian head.
Right. Which is, look, pretty close.
Pretty close.
You got to think what these boys have been seeing and what these guys are seeing. And everybody has sulfur in their fucking face, right?
And like we mentioned earlier, there was a hissing noise.
Yes. I mean, it's the same shit.
Same shit.
So as
creature with claws was noted too.
Right.
So
and we're experts now because
we've
read this thing twice.
And we watched a 40-minute doc.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this is probably the same thing. Right.
Yes.
This is probably the Phantom making rounds and all that stuff. So let's talk some expert analysis type of things, and let's talk some what the government says as well. Okay.
The government says shh.
Yes. Right. All right. So shortly after the UFO crash word got out, paranormal investigators just started swooping down and swarming Flatwoods, right? And this all this stuff. And this is the 50s, okay? You got to think, in the 50s, we were in a big, this is like, the UFO thing was huge, right?
Yeah.
You were getting all these sci-fi movies that are coming out, and everything had to do with, flying saucers.
The boom had just set, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I actually read following up to this show was that Mount Hope. Where's Mount Hope in West Virginia?
It's. I think it's still around the central. I've never been there.
It's still around there.
Yeah, but I think it's somewhere in that. It's in West Virginia,
right?
Okay.
In the year 1950, from Mount Hope, you had your first reported real life.
Oh, that
UFO
was a big
sighting.
deal, yeah. And that's something I remember as a kid. Well, I'm not that old, but I remember hearing that the Mount Hope UFO sighting. But I don't really know much about it, right? Because no one actually will expand on it or whatever.
Sure.
But
we learned that it did spawn though a variety of others coming from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the nearby states in that area. So I mean, the boom was happening, right? Yeah, for sure. And the government's taking note to all of this.
Right, and I don't know why that tri-state, like you said, the Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, why that was so, like, what's the deal? Why would so many aliens, maybe a lot of fields?
There's a lot of land.
Yeah, I always wonder that. Like, if aliens are going to come visit Earth, what part of Earth would you visit?
So I would stay away from the LAs, the New Yorks.
Okay, so big cities. So you stay away from that, right?
Wouldn't you go to, like, the fields? Like
maybe you would, right?
I mean, West Virginia sounds like the ideal place to hit.
I would go to like rural fields or go to the desert. Oh wow, Area 52. Wow. Okay, all this is starting to coming together, right? So, all right. So one of the most enthusiastic investigators, Gray Barker, he made tons of recordings and witness testimonials and stuff like that, and he wrote an article for Fate magazine, and went to publish a book and stuff like that. But I guess, like, with all the witnesses that he started talking to, everybody was drawing the same picture, right? When you had, especially, okay, you tell me you line up 6 kids right now. All right, you saw a monster last night, right? Okay, yeah. Draw it. And if they all draw the same picture, I think these kids may have seen a fucking monster.
Time to scratch your head.
Yeah. Right, and then this guy concluded straight up. He goes, because of the fumes and all the witness accounts, he's like 100%. Yeah, it was extraterrestrial activity out there, right? And then you had a couple other ones, guys up there that I think another paranormal investigator, Ivan T. Ho, and these other guys were actually saying, a military guy, a former military guy as well, was saying that they go and investigate, but they all concluded that this was like a guaranteed authentic case of alien contact, So, but once again, who are they, right? So now it comes down to the government, and this is where it gets a little bit weird, all right? So
talk to me about the government.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, on the night of September 12th, a meteor was seen streaking across the sky in 3 states: Maryland, Pennsylvania, and of course West Virginia. Right, so they all kind of coming around there, and it raised alarm, obviously, right, because people kept reporting a plane crash. So remember when the sheriff went to go investigate this, right? So everybody's starting to call this in because you see a fucking meteor. I get that, and that's fine. Once again, it's 1952. You don't have the best, I guess, radar. Like we know when a meteor is coming right now, like 400 years ahead of time, right?
Sure.
Well, back in those days, maybe you didn't. I don't know. I wasn't alive, but
there was no app to check.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, so most people believe the object they saw, was the actual meteor. Okay, the red pulsing light, though, and everything was probably people to say was an aircraft hazard beacon, right? And once again, I read that hazard beacon, which is fine, but then how does it? It has to be a helicopter. We don't have any what's called VTOL aircraft, and that's a vertical takeoff type of aircraft like we do now with the Harriers and stuff like that. We have that, and that was, I don't think we got that until the 80s, honestly, right? So, and then helicopters, they were invented after World War II, but were they perfected? And then wouldn't you see some type of rotor blade or something, right?
Right.
And then a helicopter has a distinct sound, okay? It does. No one said anything. They just heard hissing, right?
Sure, and I feel like if it was a helicopter, it'd be a bigger deal just because it would be the first, probably.
So apparently the U.S. government sent some men and wearing black clothes, right? The men in black to houses around the sighting, and they had a little talk, little eyewitness reports and all this good stuff, and including Mrs. May, right? The ones that really took the kids up here and saw it. They visited her. Said she had some oil on her dress from where the crash site was, and I guess they took the dress and basically gave her said that, well, you're never going to get this back. And 2, here's a letter, and it basically told you to shh.
Yeah, keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut, right? And I think at that point right there, where the government's sending men in black down, that should be the big fucking eye-opener right there.
And you're in West Virginia.
Right.
Like, you're probably not used to getting men in suits like that just rolling into your town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You'll stand out like a...
That's everybody stops what they're doing to watch what's going on.
Correct,
right?
yeah. And then, we've also heard of the men in black at the Mothman sightings as well, right? And this was 14 years later when they were over in Point Pleasant. So this, I don't know who the men in black are. Is it CIA? Is there, because people are like, oh, we would know if the government has a secret, I guess group or an agency that takes care of shit like this. And let me tell you something right now. I worked for the government 20 years. 2 things. One, they don't give a fuck about us, right? We are measly little mites on this big wheel, right? That's going around, right? So don't think the government cares about you. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I learned that the hard way.
Facts.
Yes. And 2, there's agencies, there's departments that not even the president knows about, right? The president's a figurehead.
Think about that.
Okay, how many times has even when Trump was in office last term, right? He kept going, I'm going to find out if aliens are real. I'm going to find out if JFK got shot.
Sure.
These are all shit that people know. And somewhere in one form of government or not, right? No. And guess what? The president, you were gone in 4 years. You don't need to know this shit, right? It's one of those. So everybody thinks the president's the high level shit. President, there is way higher levels than the president. So when the president's really asking, we're going to get to the bottom of this, there's people behind closed doors in little red rooms with lights laughing going, you'll never fucking know, And this is why, dude, I believe that something like this is like when you send men in black down here, or just investigators from the government, from a 3-letter agency, and then I'm sure they got a good cover story, or whatever. Something is up. Okay?
Yeah, something's going on, especially with the whole town seemingly seeing what's going on here. And
which is wild, dude.
You're getting several reports. Yeah. You're all drawing the same images.
Fucking scary as shit, man. I'm telling you right now. All right. So there's the information we got so far. Okay, and now we got some lore. We got some, I guess, some pulp culture off of this as well, right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Flatwoods has got a museum.
Well, okay, I'm
right?
going to bring that up, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing I wanted to note about this is how, how much good this does for a small town, right?
Yes.
Because now you start printing out shirts, you start making little figures, plushies.
It's a destination.
It's now a destination, right?
Right.
So now your small town becomes heavily populated and invaded by tourists.
Yes.
A lot of income. Now we could grow this sucker. We start taking some acres and building some Walmarts.
Yeah.
But
that's how towns are built.
That's how towns are built.
Well, you look at Point Pleasant. Once again, I'm actually upset at myself that I didn't know more about the Flatwood Phantom or the Flatwood Monster growing up in West Virginia, since I was only a couple hours away.
But you have like the Metallica of all cryptids.
We do, yeah. We the Metallica, the AC/DC of fucking cryptids. A Mothman,
you have the freaking Mothman, dude.
And he literally just his wingspan just overshadows everything that comes out in West Virginia, right? Fucking, we could invent the cure to cancer. Oh, that's great. But you guys have Mothman, right?
Okay.
But it does do wonders for a town. Point Pleasant. No offense to Point Pleasant, but it probably wouldn't be doing much if it wasn't for the Mothman. The tourist industry down there is amazing,
Sure.
And everything. They can still get away with selling $35 T-shirts down there.
Damn, man.
So it's pretty rad, So
next time we must drive 2 hours east to to the heaters,
yeah,
and go check out that whole. I would love to go take a walk through those woods. Man.
I have to. We have to walk through there. We got to go to the spot, all right, where they saw the actual, the landing and all that stuff. And I want to go up there, man. I really want to check it out. And there's also video games. Like, have you ever heard of Fallout 76? I think
I've heard of this.
Yeah, they did an actual West Virginia, Appalachia type of thing, and they have big boss characters, right?
Jesus.
The Mothman and the Flatwoods Monster, which. I don't know. You look at both of them side by side. The Flatwoods fucking Phantom is scarier, if you ask me.
Menacing, dude, and that glow around it just seals the deal for me.
Fuck, man, yeah. So
but it's cool that the locals though can embrace their little local hero, their lore. 100%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was cool watching that documentary, and they're just, I don't want to say not proud of it, but they're stoked.
They're stoked.
Yeah.
But the weird thing about the documentary, and you know what? And speaking of that. I got somebody for us in a second here. But speaking of the documentary, when they interviewed two of the May family, because a lot of them are dead, okay? I mean, this was 1952, guys, So right after World War II, the two Mays, I want to say Fred and Ed, I believe their names were.
Yeah, that was it.
They were, they're in their 70s at this point, but how much, they gave the exact description of what they saw to the point, but they made zero speculation, right? They just said, hey, and actually they called it, what they saw was mechanical. Right, so it wasn't an alien life form. It was mechanical, which is kind of weird too,
Yeah.
But one thing both of them said was, "I wish this never happened to me,"
and that bothered me.
I wish this never happened to me. Right,
and I get it. Right.
That is fucking government psyops 101, motherfuckers, right there. I'm telling you right now, because the government will come down, they give you not a cease and desist, but let me tell you something. And I love how the movie Men in Black would make you look at that little pen.
Tommy Lee Jones shows up,
and all of a sudden you look at a pen and you forget what happened. This is their version, where it's it's best that my friend, tell your account, because you've already told your account, right? And if you backtrack, it look even more weirder, right? Yeah. Tell your fucking account, but also say. Trigger the human response to feel sorry for you. In other words, I wish this never happened to me. This has been a nightmare. Yeah. This and that, and then people will be like, "Oh, I feel bad for them. Let's leave
these guys alone.
Fred and Ed alone, right?
Man."
And this story dies off, and then whatever alien encounter we had goes back into the deep, dark vaults of fucking a 3-letter agency.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you're the Mays, and the government comes knocking, and they talk to you, and they want you to be tight-lipped, and can you imagine seeing that, though, and just pretending like it doesn't exist or it didn't happen? I mean, of course, they're going to probably threaten your livelihood, your family.
For sure.
But, what do you do? You saw the Flatwoods Phantom.
Yeah. And you know it. You know it. But then you have these men in black threatening you. Now, this is scary. As a small town, this is big communism days, we're fighting Russia. Everybody's afraid of that big government machine, right? And then all of a sudden you have these guys come down and you've never seen. They look fine ass suits and they got shades on and they're like, this is, you just don't need to talk about this anymore, or we will make your life a living hell. Sure. You're going to shut the fuck up and you're going to go back to the general store and just go work there. I'm like, I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a sulfur. I don't know.
And the one thing about the Mays in the documentary, they do. I'm sorry, but they look like pushovers.
They look, they look like good old boys. That all they want to do is just be on their, live a simple life, right?
Sure.
So they're definitely not edgy at all.
No, there's no rebellion in them.
Right. This is why I would die.
Yeah,
because I would be the guy going, "Fuck you."
Yeah, no.
I'm like, I gotta make a documentary on this shit, right?
Jason's on top of a mountain heater, just screaming at the top of his lungs.
Right? I need to. I'm doing Alien Contact again. And all that. Either that or I run the store. I'd run the museum, right? But
right.
All right, look. We're idiots.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We know that is the extent of what we know. How about we bring on somebody that may know just a little bit more? Guys, on the phone today, we have the director of multiple documentaries to include The Mothman Legacy, Bloodlines, The Jersey Devil Curse, American Werewolves, and The Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear. We're honored to be talking to Mr. Seth Breedlove. What's up, Seth? How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's we just put a new movie out yesterday or the day before,
wow.
So it's a crazy week.
What dropped?
On the trail of Bigfoot: Last Frontier.
Yes,
which is like our Alaskan Bigfoot movie we filmed last May.
Oh.
So that just came out, and we're dealing with all the headaches associated with putting out an independent movie.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's fun.
I saw the graphic on the Small Town Monsters page. It looks rad.
Yeah. I'm down. I'm on it then. I'm definitely. Because, dude, your docs, they're freaking amazing, man. But I think we're about halfway through your IMDb list right now.
We're chugging along.
Yeah. And I love each one of them, man. But have you always been like a monster kid, man? Or what actually drove you to create these awesome documentaries?
Yeah, no, I was not I was definitely not a cryptid guy. What got me into film was my mom was kind of a geek when she was growing up, and she was really into the Christopher Lee Hammer horror stuff.
Oh yeah,
and like Ray Harryhausen movies. And so when we were homeschooled, myself and my siblings were homeschooled, and part of our schooling was to learn about movies, and she showed us Curse of Dracula and Hound of the Baskervilles, and Jason and the Argonauts was the big one that like I can remember. That was the movie where we watched it, and I became aware.
Oh yeah, had all that great stop motion, man. Jason Argonauts.
Yeah,
I remember that, right?
Yeah, that was the one where I can remember learning, like figuring out that there were actually people that made the movies behind the camera. So that was, I guess, what got me into filmmaking.
Nice. And I mean, how long have you been? I mean, since a kid, or is this something you picked up as an adult? Or did you go to school at all for this? Or you just like, man, I'm going to study. Once again, a lot of stuff people. The School of YouTube has helped out a lot, just in filmmaking in general, man. But how did you get into that side of things?
Yeah, no, we wanted to I wanted to go to film school when I was a kid. It's actually how I met my director of photography. I was holding a New York Film Academy flyer, and I was sitting outside of a Borders Books that he worked at, and that's how we became buddies. But no, I never went to film school. I wanted to do filmmaking. But I was told very young that it was not realistic, which is true, especially at that point in time, which was like 1998, 99.
Yeah.
You were still working off film and that kind of thing. And there was no place to really gain an audience unless you were going to do the whole film festival circuit,
For
kind
sure.
of thing. Yeah. So it was something I'd always wanted to do, but no, I didn't go to film school. I pretty much am self-taught, but I watched a lot of like Film Riot and Studio Binder and things like that on YouTube. And kind of picked up what I could through that. And then we just, we made our first movie in 2015, started filming it in 2014, had it out in 2015. But the bigger part of filmmaking for me, especially at that point in time, we make documentaries, but I was working as a newspaper reporter, freelancer for like 8 years, and I brought a lot of that into it, I think. Yeah. And so that's how that's how I got my start in all of this, was just like bringing some of the skills I learned in reporting around to the filmmaking side of it.
It works. I'm telling you, we love your docs, man. So well, look, me jump right into it, because I grew up right outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia, right? And where the audiences don't know, that's where the Mothman legend came from. But growing up, you never heard a lot about the Flatwoods Phantom, the Flatwoods Monster, whatever you want to call it, Braxty. I mean, you'd hear a little something here, but it seems like the Mothman would overshadow this, the other legend, man. Why do you think that happened? Why does Mothman get all the press, man?
Yeah, I don't know. Flatwoods is way cooler.
Yeah, I agree.
And my son Tommy, he's obsessed with the Flatwoods monster. So that's like that's it on a rotation in my house constantly. But right. I think, well, I mean, the number one reason that Mothman is a compelling story to so many people is it has a beginning, middle, and an end.
Sure.
I mean, you could argue that it never ended. Certainly, that's what like our Mothman Legacy movie is about. Right. But as far as the initial story, it's the only cryptid or paranormal story that I'm aware of, legend, whatever you want to call it, that has like a classic 3-act structure.
Right.
You know, and it all culminates with the collapse of the Silver Bridge. There really isn't anything else like that, and right. I think people really latch on to that. It also touches so many other aspects of the paranormal that people find fascinating, like UFO sightings and poltergeists and right. Men in Black and all that kind of stuff, government cover-ups, basically anything you want to throw in there. It happened in 66 and 67 in Point Pleasant, and that's what people are responding to, I think.
No, for sure, actually, and especially the Men in Black thing, which... All right, let me look. I'm going to bear with me because I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for a second here. Justin, you justice for me real quick. Thank you. Look, all right. We went over all the facts before you came on, so the audience is kind of caught up and all that stuff. I'm no expert, all right? But to me, and I worked for the government for 20 years, man, this screams cover-up, okay? I'm just throwing this out here. Do you think this was an actual UFO or some type of CIA experiment or government experiment, or like they said, it was, what, rockets or something like that? What is your honest opinion. What do you think landed in Flatwoods in 1952?
Yeah, and I think it was an experimental rocket.
Yeah.
And I think it was covered up. I don't actually have any doubt about it. I don't buy into the alien hypothesis just because what they described seeing, what Ed and Fred May, who actually saw the thing, described seeing was a rocket. Like there's no other way around it. Sure. Like they said they saw a rocket. Right. So that's my opinion, is that's what they encountered. And I don't know. I love all the other stuff surrounding the story. Certainly, there were other encounters that supposedly took place with something that would sort of point more in the direction of an alien. But yeah, to me, I think it was an experimental rocket that went up and came down unexpectedly. Yeah. Out there around the same time. I think there were multiple that came down around the same time, and that's why you had a military presence almost immediately in the area.
That's what. I was kind of feeling something like that too. But also, once I went down that rabbit hole, Justin and I here, and of like all the eyewitness accounts of not the monster itself, but the actual machine or whatever that may have been that came up here. And a lot of people too were talking when they had a flat top. I heard that a couple times, right? Yeah, and also you heard it today, Justin, that someone said that one of their was a thumping sound. Right. Now, we also know in the early 50s was experimental helicopter stuff as well, so I'm always like thinking, and then of course there was skid marks, right? And then at the landing site and gone. I don't know. I was also like, is this a helicopter? But then again, did anybody see it leave, either? So maybe you're right, man. I mean, but there's no debris or anything like that. That's kind of weird to me, man. So that's where I'm like, what the hell is going on? This thing, man. But rockets, I lean to that a little as well. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. It was Cold War is cooking up at that time, and we had to stay ahead of the Soviets, and I don't know, But when I see the May brothers both claim that, I was on your doc, we wish this never happened to us, right? And to me, that's once again, tinfoil hat going on. It's a classic 3-letter agency psyops type of stuff, man. Get the people feeling sorry for the victims, right? So they don't press them too hard on the facts and the eyewitness accounts. You just kind of want to, leave them alone, man. Exactly, to me, what a Fed would tell you to do. So do you think they were threatened at all? I mean, I think Kathleen May, they said, got a letter, although I don't, has that ever surfaced, or is that just rumor that she got that letter kind of telling her to be quiet?
I think I asked them about that, and they seemed a little befuddled by that side of the story. I mean, the thing about that story that hopefully our doc makes it kind of clear, but the water got muddied almost immediately because you had Gray Barker involved, who was like kind of this. Con man. I mean, in a lot of ways. and you had Ivan Sanderson, who was fairly respected, especially today, in the field of cryptozoology, but also was, like very self-promotional and that kind of thing. Both these guys get involved at the earliest stage of the whole case.
Right.
And the story that formulates after that is all based on what they're saying rather than what the actual witnesses are saying.
Sure.
So you're getting quotes from them that are supposedly coming from the witnesses, but they're not actually coming from the witnesses.
Right.
So, it's a weird case because I don't think that the story as it was initially reported is what happened.
Right.
So many aspects of it that are considered canon or Bible today, like the dog dying. I mean, that stuff never happened. The UFO that landed on the ground and supposedly they walked up to it and all that kind of thing, that never happened.
Yeah.
So they saw a glowing light in the woods off the side of the hill, and then the assumption was that it was some sort of craft that was down there, but they didn't see a craft. They didn't see anything like that. It's it's a weird case, and a lot of it is based around what these two men kind of put out into the public knowledge. Created the public knowledge behind it.
Yeah, because I think immediately a reporter was brought in to help the sheriff with the investigation, which is like, well, what he's going to do. He's got to make a living, so he's got to throw these up. So I'm sure there was no secrecy to this, to whatever happened, this and that. So and then, like I said, you mentioned like the dog dying and all that stuff. That goes classic urban legend stuff, and the telephone game, right? You tell me something, I tell Justin something, Justin tells someone else, but it comes back to you. It's a totally different story, or the big fish story, right? This gets better and better every time you tell it. But I think
that's how most of these legends are formed.
Sure.
In the public consciousness, at least, the actual version of events never exactly aligns with what most people think the story is about. I mean, in Ohio, where I'm at, growing up, we always heard about Old Orange Eyes, which was this this creature that supposedly lived under a bridge near Mansfield, Ohio, and people would encounter it and it would chase them off and things like that. Those sightings are all based around a story from nearby Ashland of this creature that was called Big Head, which is a comparable story. These kids would see this creature behind their house. It had glowing orange eyes. The story becomes something else entirely over time. We had another one near where I grew up called there's a little town that was formerly a coal mining town, and it's called Mineral City. It's literally like 2 miles from where I grew up. Growing up, they had a monster called Minnie the Monster, which was a Bigfoot that supposedly lived in this tunnel and would come out and scare people when they went up to the abandoned tunnel to like Neck at night. Teenagers would go up there and they'd come out and terrify them. And but it's all based on actual sightings that took place near there. It's just it becomes something else entirely in the retelling.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's I love. There's so many damn urban legends out there.
There is.
With Justin's from Salem, right? And you had a couple, right? From Massachusetts. You had
the Pukwudgies. Seth, I was going to ask you. You do some amazing documentaries. When are we going to get one for the little New England area for Pukwudgies? Maybe some Gloucester sea monster action, or is this any possibility?
We talked about. We actually did have a Pukwudgie discussion a couple years ago. But it's tough doing what we do. This stuff, certain stories, the public will glom onto and they'll hit. Like Mothman. But something like Pukwudgies is one of those things where I'm pretty sure if we put that movie out, no one would watch it because it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a name recognition, and that's why we're doing So we started. We fund everything we do each year through a Kickstarter, and so this year we've always wanted to do a Chupacabra movie, but it's one of those topics, kind of like Jersey Devil,
right?
Where we don't think an audience is going to support it. So we're trying to basically just crowdfund so we can go direct to our audience with it.
Nice.
It's going to be like a Kickstarter exclusive title. And we're going to start doing that each year just because we make, this year we're doing 2 Dogman movies and 2 Bigfoot movies because those are the ones we know we're going to spend the money. The money will come back to us.
Right.
We'll do a good job with it, but we all kind of love the lesser known cryptids, and we don't want to stop doing that just because we can't make it successful. So we're just trying to find a way to make it successful so we can keep making movies like Flatwoods.
Yeah.
Because Flatwoods, when it came out, was a flop too. That's the thing. People don't realize a lot of the movies we make, they don't connect until they're free. Sure. Like they come out free on Prime or something and then they hit. But the problem is to make it, and then to make it, there's no funding for STM. We're entirely independent.
Right.
So we crowdfund it. There's no one like giving us money. We don't do investments and that kind of thing. So
for sure. Well,
I got off track.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes total sense. I mean, even here, so we run a horror shop here in Arizona, and as much as I love the lesser known type of horror movies, characters,
sure,
you got to sell your Chuckies, you got to sell your Jason Voorhees, you got to sell your Michael Myers if you want to make money. We
talk about New York horror here all the time, right? The Chuds of the world, and all those other basket case. But if you lean on that, you're probably going to come up empty. Right?
We'll be out the streets. No. Well, let me jump in here real quick because we kind of covered the UFO, and one thing, I've been in Braxton County a bunch as a kid, man. Central West Virginia, first off, it's a different world, man. UFO sightings aren't the weirdest thing you're going to see down that area, right? So, but have you heard? Has there been any more UFO sightings down there, or is it, I mean, like legit ones? I know during the 50s that tri-state area was pretty rough or pretty heavy with UFO activity. What I've read, obviously, I wasn't alive during that thing, but I don't know how much more has hit that Braxton County area. You heard anything about that, or is that like
we were actually just in West Virginia. We're in West Virginia constantly because it's actually my favorite state. Sure. But also we're constantly working on stuff. We made a movie 2 years ago called On the Trail of UFO's Dark Sky that's entirely about UFO activity in West Virginia.
Oh,
and it also ties back into Flatwoods with the Bashful Billy stuff that happened over near Wheeling.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're aware of that, but there's constant activity. In fact, like in the last couple of weeks, there was a rash of sightings near like St. Albans.
Oh,
so it seems to me like there's always something going on there. As far as Braxton County goes, the trick there is that it's not a heavily populated part of the state. I mean, no section of that state is heavily populated, but that's one of the lesser populated sections of the state. Sure. And what I came to find while we were making that movie especially was that this activity is pretty much constant. People up in the hills and stuff experience it constantly. They just don't talk about it really.
Sure.
You can throw a rock and hit someone who had a sighting there. It's just whether or not they're going to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess I haven't been back I've been back, but I haven't lived there in 20 years, so that's probably why I don't hear as much. But that's interesting. But one thing that's okay. Let's talk about the monster. I kind of got off track on the UFO. I see shiny objects and I roll. So, but let's talk about this monster because. In 47 we had the Roswell incident, right? So we kind of introduced the grays into the world, or gray aliens and all that stuff. But this description was so much different, right? And then we have a spade-shaped type of alien or whatever this thing may be, a monster. And I think a lot of the eyewitnesses drew, when they had to draw this thing out, kind of the same shape, right? That's what interests me, because getting a group of people in West Virginia, once again, I grew up there, is it to draw the same thing and agree for the same thing that looks like the same thing is kind of tough unless you pre-plan it, which this doesn't sound like it was pre-planned, man. What's your thoughts on that? Is it weird? Because, hey, would it be, if they came out with this alien looked, this 8 foot to 15 foot tall alien looked like a traditional gray or whatever, and then I'd be like, okay, we've read some newspaper articles or whatever, but this was a different look. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it was spade shaped.
You don't think so?
Like I when you hear the actual witnesses talk about it directly, what they're saying they saw was shaped like a rocket.
Okay.
The head of it. The spade shape, I don't quite know where that comes from. I don't know if, we built a 15-foot tall replica of the Flatwoods monster that's in the movie. So we actually built this huge monster that's supposed to be the actual Flatwoods monster, and we based it directly off the witness descriptions.
Right. And
you can kind of see the spade shape to the head, but to me, I still just see an experimental rocket.
Okay.
It's the funniest thing about the story to me, because the classic Flatwoods monster with the spade-shaped head and all that kind of stuff, that's my favorite, quote-unquote, designed cryptid. or designed for any one of these monster stories. Sure. But the actual description of it is kind of boring. Like it's an experimental rocket with like portholes, and they think there might have been something inside of it, like piloting it. But right. That's it. That was their description is kind of dull.
That's interesting, man. That's because we're going back to the experimental rocket thing, which I kind of crossed over my mind, but maybe once again, I'm a monster kid, and I want to believe that these things are out there, right? These and all that, and then the sulfur smell, and then the oil spit at them, and all that stuff. I'm like, well, that kind of does. Okay, it does sound like a rocket. The more so damn, Seth, you're changing my mind here a little bit. So
well, even the I talked to someone after the movie came out who was there that night. Uh-huh. They came to a screening of the movie, and I talked to them for a minute. Their belief was that the even the oil slick and the tread marks that went through the grass up toward the spot, their belief was that was the truck. So apparently there was a nearby farmer that rushed up the hill right after this happened, after the kids came down, and that's what the tire tread marks were from.
Nice.
His belief was that. So a lot of these movies that we're making, in a way, debunk the legend, but we do it in a way that still I think is kind of loving of the legend and the monster on the whole. Like we just did this with Jersey Devil. Like you couldn't have a movie that more clearly lays out for you how that story was born and what's actually behind it. But it's totally fine to want there to be a Flatwoods. I tell my kid all the time, like, that is the one monster that I know exists, because like I talked to the guys that saw it, and what they saw is nothing that crazy. It's nothing that outlandish, and they're as believable as you could get when it comes to witnesses.
How was contacting like Ed and Fred and May and actually getting them to come on camera and all that? Was it difficult, or were they were like, okay, yeah, no problem, we'll do this?
No, this is funny. So Fred, I bumped into totally by accident. I was at Andrew Smith's house. Andrew runs the Braxton County Museum, and it just turns out that Fred owns a house. It's abandoned, but he owns a house next door to Andrew, and he happened to be there when we were there. And so Andrew went over and talked to him for probably like 45 minutes and got him to agree to talk to me. So him and I sat down on the front porch and just talked for a couple hours while the crew sat in my car waiting on me. And so I talked to him for a couple hours, and he liked me and agreed to do it. Then he contacted his brother and asked him if he would be interested, and Ed said no, because Ed had not talked about this publicly ever.
Really?
And never. Never's done an interview or anything. And he was also they were both battling cancer at the time. So we talked about whether or not we could get Ed. Fred said there's no way he's ever going to do it. Somehow I got put in touch with Ed through the phone, and him and I started talking, just had conversations. A lot of getting witnesses to talk is just talking to them about things that have nothing to do with the case. So we were talking about something, I forget what we were talking about, but it turned out he owned a historic home, like a landmark home, down in the southern part of West Virginia, I think near Greenbrier. I don't know if that's actually in the southern. I think it's like the eastern part of the state. But, so my dad at one point owned a historical bookstore that was pretty much about the Civil War, and this house was a Civil War home. My dad, I thought, could convince this guy to be in the movie because they were both Civil War buffs. And so I was going to shoot Fred's interview, and it was going to be shot at Ed's house because it was just easier. That's where Fred was staying at the time. And so when I went to shoot the interview, I took my dad. My dad talked to Ed for maybe like 5 minutes, and they hit it off really well, and Ed just agreed to do the movie on the spot. And so we shot them both in that field and there was dust covering the lens, which I didn't realize till after the fact. But we got the only interview ever with Ed May and the last interview ever with Fred May regarding that subject. And to me, it kind of closes the door on the whole thing. You're going to have television and all that kind of stuff trying to dredge this up a lot, as being an alien incident. But I feel like their witness description kind of contradicts what people think the Flatwoods Monster is.
Yeah, and I think that's why we fell in love with your docs, because it does, because we've seen plenty of docs and stuff, or especially YouTube or whatever, about the Flatwoods Monster, but this is eyewitness accounts, and this is also debunking some of the stuff, like my dog didn't die, but and all that. So, which. Some parts I was a little shredding a tear a little bit. I was like, I want to hear some really crazy, stuff, man. But it's also good though, because it's straight from the horse's mouth. And like you said, this is the last interviews you're going to see, and which to me is that's epic, man. That's crazy, and good on you, man, for doing stuff like this. And this is why I'm pushing your docs to everybody we can out here, because they're awesome. They push.
They're also really well done too, because like I think the first 60 seconds to 2 minutes is like the most important part, right? Got to captivate you, got to keep you interested. Yeah, and his looked just so goddamn good. Right?
Yeah, it was amazing, man.
Yeah,
fucking awesome.
So, that Tommy. My son adores the opening of that movie. We have to listen to the soundtrack when I pick him up from school almost every day. And I'm into that cold open thing. That's like when I was growing up, I always adored the Mission Impossible movies.
Yes.
And I always go back to that first Mission Impossible where it's got the cold open, and then you segue into this like crazy credit sequence that gets you more and more excited to watch what you're about to watch.
For sure.
And with cryptids and this kind of stuff especially, you got to pull people in from the get-go. And so that's what I learned that through our first movie, Minerva Monster, because there's no recreations, there's no visuals of the monster at all. And I just remember when it came out, everyone was really it's a fairly well regarded Bigfoot doc, even though I think it's kind of embarrassing when I watch it now. But I remember a lot of the reviews were like, there's no Bigfoot in this movie. And so by the time we got to this, this is, to me, Flatwoods is the most visually exciting movie we've ever made, because it's short. It's super short. It's like 39 minutes or whatever.
Right.
And then it's kind of packed front to back with either illustrations and paintings or animation or the live action stuff we did, which I really love the live action stuff we did on this movie. We kind of cut between styles with like this real world kind of like Saving Private Ryan vibe. And then the more like kitschy, super kitschy, like sci-fi styled, the stuff we shot on the green screen with the CG monster in the field and things like that. It's got a lot of different styles in it, and I think it all comes together really well.
Yeah, it flows beautifully, man. Beautiful show. Yeah.
One question I'm just really curious about. So, like, Jason just went back to West Virginia to visit his mom, and he went to, of course, the museum, the Mothman Museum. Yeah. So, and where they're, of course, still championing the Mothman and everything. If you still go to Flatwoods, and I saw it a little bit in your documentary, are there still shops? Are there still places that you can go and see a bunch of the...
It's funny with Flatwoods. The museum is no longer in Flatwoods. It's actually over in Sutton, which is the neighboring town. So there's a Flatwoods Monster Museum, and then also Sutton has kind of like embraced the Bigfoot topic in the last 2 years. Now they have a Bigfoot museum. They do an annual Bigfoot festival. Bigfoot's actually bigger there at this point than the Flatwoods Monster itself.
Wow.
So, and there's a tie between the Flatwoods Monster and Bigfoot that a lot of people don't realize, which is just that in the 70s there was a series, there was like a rash of Bigfoot sightings that took place near Flatwoods, and the media dubbed that event the Return of the Flatwoods Monster, which is kind of comical because they're not at all comparable, like visually, but the media ran with it.
That's awesome, man.
That is, man.
Hey, that's what you got to do, man. It keeps towns alive. Listen, I mean, like I said, I Point Pleasant, if we didn't have Mothman, I don't know what we'd have. You know what I'm saying? Right. I mean, we have chemical plants. And
it is what's cool too, because since watching this documentary, that's kind of what we've been doing out here, all the way in Arizona. Just talking all about the Flatwoods Monster, Phantom, whatever.
And we're educating people out here a lot because there's obviously we're trying. Yeah, we're very amateur anyway. But I mean, there's a lot of cryptid and urban legend type of fans out here, obviously, and all that. When actually, let me jump right into that. It's I always ask this, like last question, Seth, and we'll let you roll off here. But I always, people in your field, man, and this is the people I always like to ask. I mean, I ask everybody. Jessica hit me up all the time. But what is it about cryptids? What is it about that urban legend lore, man, that people freaking love, man? It just attracts. It's magnetic, But what is it about that? Is it just the unknown or what, man? So, in your opinion,
it's the ultimate escape. It's an escape in the fact that you might be able to find something in your own backyard that people don't think is real. It's the mystery of it, and then it's an escape. And we live in a really crappy world,
right?
With awful stuff happening on a daily basis, and cryptids and the paranormal in general just offer an escape that it bridges reality with a sort of fantasy. And I'm not debunking all of any of this stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's something that a lot of people think isn't real, that you can go search for yourself, and it's a form of exploration, I think, too. So
I agree.
That's a
100%,
weird
man.
answer. But,
no, I love it. It's great. Like I said, I ask everybody this, and I get multiple different answers, but they all kind of come back to the same thing. It's that mystery.
Right.
It's like, maybe that's there.
What if?
Right? What if? Sure. And you're right. We're in a world where we can use a little what if here and there, right. It makes us feel good. So
escapism was a great way to put it.
Yeah, excellent. So, all right, look, guys, I need you to go follow Seth on IG. Go to @SmallTownMonsters, and in between each word there is an underscore, Small Town Monsters, which is your production company. And go check out all his docs, guys. Support him as well, because he's making amazing stuff. Him and his team out there. Hey, where can I grab that your latest show, On the Trail of Bigfoot: The Last Frontier?
It's out on most of the major VOD platforms, iTunes and Google Play, Amazon, all those places.
And I just want to say, being like a physical copy guy, it's so important to stress the importance of buying physical media as well, too. So, like, the Small Town Monsters website does a great job with putting everything. You got the DVD options, Blu-ray options. Oh, yeah. A lot of cool merchandise.
And that one's super cool because it's like... what is it? I just figured it the other day. It's like 5 hours of content on there, actually, because the movie itself 70 minutes, but then we have 2 tie-in episodes of a series that we produce called Beyond the Trail, and some of the crew filmed themselves out on this island. I mean, it's not actually an island, but it's kind of cut off from the mainland, actually looking for Bigfoot in the woods out there. And it ties into, it's actually in the movie, we do like a 12-minute section of the movie that kind of segues into that 2-episode series. Nice. So we put that on it's a 2-disc set on Blu-ray and DVD.
I'm buying it right now. I love this. Those are the stuff I love. Give me the extra, because you know why? That makes me extra smart. Right? When I get in a conversation, like, oh, okay, you've seen the 70-minute. Let me educate you further on. So,
and you're supporting something super special.
Absolutely, guys. So, Seth, thank you so much. I'd love to have you back on down the line if you'd love to have us, but it won't be too painful. But you covered tons of great topics, and which we're going to get into a few of these down the line here. So appreciate your time, guys, and then of course, we'll see you next time on another Terror Traders Terror Files.